Here are 5 of the greatest NBA trades and signings that have led to an NBA championship that year or the year after. Obviously, there are many NBA teams each year looking to win an NBA championship. They are in contention, but may need one more piece to get them over the line. All it takes is one addition, one player, to help get that team to the next level, and could possibly lead them to an NBA championship or many NBA championships in the future. These are only 5 NBA players that have turned teams into NBA championship teams. But of course, if I'm missing any that you believe should be in this video, let me know down below in the comment section. But without further ado, if you enjoy these types of videos, I'd really appreciate your support. It takes 1 second of your time. If you could just hit that like button, it'd be greatly appreciated and help my channel grow. If you're new around here, why not hit that subscribe button for NBA content every single week? And let's get into the video. I think it's fair to say, if these teams didn't get these certain players, they may not have won their respective NBA championship, or it would have had a major effect on the end outcome of the eventual final series. Keep in mind, these are not in any order. At number 5, Rasheed Wallace for the Detroit Pistons. During the 2003-04 season, the Detroit Pistons started out strong, winning 14 out of their first 20 playoff games, but it wouldn't last, and management quickly realized if they had any chance to go anywhere this postseason, they needed to make a move during the season. They were a good team, but looking for that one piece to help get them ready for the playoffs and push for the NBA Finals. That's when a disgruntled Portland team who had had enough of Rasheed would actually trade him over to the Atlanta Hawks, where he played a total of 1 game. Yeah. He literally only played 1 game and shot as many shots as he could in that 1 game for the Atlanta Hawks. But then he was quickly traded to the Detroit Pistons in a salary dump move, as he had no use in Atlanta. But for the Detroit Pistons, he was literally their perfect player.
He fit in the first minute he stepped in that locker room.
Welcome, boy, welcome.
We didn't even know how good of a defender he was until he got here.
A great hot shot by Rasheed Wallace.
I just thought he was a perfect fit. I thought he embodied what we wanted to be here. Here's a guy that wants to win. Here's a guy that's dedicated. He's unselfish. He's a great teammate. I just thought that, you know what, that guy's a Detroit Piston.
When you look at the Detroit Pistons of 2004, he not only added to the defensive philosophy and mentality of the Detroit Pistons at the time with Rip Hamilton, Ben Wallace, and Tayshaun Prince, he was a valuable offensive player as well. As a big man, which the Pistons really needed, considering that Ben Wallace, as great as he was defensively, wasn't a talented offensive player, which meant their front court really struggled on the offensive line. But Rasheed Wallace had some questions. He came in with an attitude and a bad temper. But that's what made him great for the Detroit Pistons. As we all know, they've always been an underdog team, a team with heart and soul and passion, and people criticizing that team the way they did with Rasheed Wallace. And whilst the attitude issues were noticeable, in Detroit he played like a man who wanted to show the fans that he was a good guy, who could help this team win and win an NBA championship, and he quickly became a fan favorite in no time. He played with an attitude and a ton of emotion and passion for the city, which they loved. And when the Pistons acquired Wallace, they were 34-23, but after, they finished the season with an astounding 20-5 record to finish the regular season with Rasheed Wallace as their new focal point. We know the rest. It's an amazing part of NBA history. The Lakers of 2004 with Kobe Bryant, Shaq, Karl Malone and Gary Payton would lose to this underdog team, the Pistons team. Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton and Tayshaun Prince, which wasn't led by anybody. It was a great team, an all-around team. All players played their role, but one thing's for sure is the Pistons don't go on to win that NBA championship without Rasheed Wallace, and him being acquired on February of 2004 was the best thing they could have done that season. To contain Kobe Bryant, Gary Payton, but in terms of their bigs in Karl Malone and Shaquille O'Neal, that was an amazing achievement. The Pistons needed the Wallace boys to play tough and physical, and without one of them, I don't think they win an NBA championship that year. Number 4, Dennis Rodman and the Chicago Bulls. With the Michael Jordan documentary airing, everybody's talking about the Bulls of the 90s, Jerry Krause and the breakup of the Bulls after their three-peat, but I think it's fair to say without Dennis Rodman as a member of the second three-peat Chicago Bulls team, it's quite possible the Bulls don't go 6 for 6 without Dennis, and here's why. The previous season, before Dennis became a Bull, Michael Jordan had returned to the team in the spring of 1995, but the Bulls still lost to the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference semifinals with Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway. And in the postseason of the Chicago Bulls meetings, they made it clear they needed a rebounder. They needed to go after somebody to replace Horace Grant, who they'd lost the year prior. Phil Jackson said, and I quote, "If we were going to win an NBA championship, we had to have somebody who could fetch the ball. That was an expression he used, according to Jerry Reinsdorf at the time. And all names kept leading back to one, the Worm, Dennis Rodman, the greatest rebounder that ever lived. And at the time, he was having issues in San Antonio, and both Dennis and the Spurs wanted to part ways. That meant the most talented rebounder ever and one of the greatest defensive players of all time was up for grabs, the literal perfect piece for this Chicago Bulls team after losing Horace Grant the year prior. The big question at the time was, would Michael Jordan be okay with it? Would Scottie Pippen even accept him?
And I was just wondering how these guys gonna take me. I'm over to Jerry Cross's house. Phil Jackson was there, Michael was there, Scottie was there. Phil Jackson got to the point, he said, Dennis, the first thing I want you to do is go over and apologize to Scottie Pippen.
I definitely can say I wasn't overly excited to get him, but it didn't take me long to say yes.
So I went outside and we talked for 5 minutes and stuff like that. And Scottie said, it's okay, everything's fine, man, don't worry about it.
The Spurs today traded the controversial Rodman to the Chicago Bulls.
We know what he had done to Scottie Pippen, especially that shove that sent Pippen into the crowd, and could have seriously hurt him. Not to mention, he was a part of the bad boy Pistons, who Jordan and the Bulls seriously hated. Even their fans despised Dennis Rodman at the Pistons at the time, considering if you were a bad boy, you were not welcome in Chicago. But in the end, they all agreed. Phil Jackson, Jordan, and Pippen said, if we were going to win an NBA championship, we needed Dennis. And that's what they did. They went out, got Dennis Rodman, and after that, they went on a 72-10 year, the best record of all time, winning the first of 3 NBA titles. 2 years later, they had won 3. I think it's hard to believe that without the addition of Dennis Rodman, who would do all the dirty work, allowing Jordan and Pippen to focus more offensively and on their assignments defensively, knowing that Dennis had their backs, I don't think the Bulls would have won 3 NBA championships after their first 3-peat without him. I mean, you really think about the way he locked down Karl Malone and aggravated him in the NBA Finals on multiple occasions. What he did to Shaq in the 1996 Eastern Conference Finals after previously losing to Shaq and the Magic the year prior without Dennis Rodman. I'm not saying that the Bulls would have struggled, of course. After all, they still have MJ and Scottie Pippen, but Dennis Rodman was an amazing signing that can't go unnoticed by Jerry Krause, despite what people think of him. And without Dennis Rodman, I don't think the Bulls win those 3 NBA championships. Number 3. Clyde Drexler and the Houston Rockets. After an NBA championship in the 1993-1994 NBA season, the Houston Rockets were expected to dominate that next season, considering they'd won an NBA championship the year prior, and they did. The Houston Rockets that season started off the year 9-0, but quickly that became 25-15 by the end of January, and the Rockets didn't look like that championship team from the year prior. On the other hand, with the Blazers out of serious contention for a championship and Clyde Drexler being extremely loyal to that team for many years, carrying that Portland Trailblazers team to 2 NBA Finals appearances during that time, they felt obligated to honor his request, sending him over to the Houston Rockets to play with his college teammate, Hakeem Olajuwon. And midway through the 1994-1995 NBA season, the Portland Trailblazers star had switched into a Rocket, and whilst Clyde the Glide had always been known as a fantastic player, he was going from a first option to a team with Hakeem Olajuwon, who would come off an NBA championship, a Finals MVP, and a regular season MVP. Which meant that Clyde the Glide was brought in to help the Rockets defend their title, but as an effective second option, which was something he hadn't done before. He was aging though, and to be back in Houston and reunited with his good friend Hakeem Olajuwon meant that the results were immediate, as Drexler played 35 games in Houston and finished second on the team in scoring with 21.4 points per game, in addition to 1.8 steals, which led the team, and 4.4 assists, which was the second most on the team. But Clyde's contributions were even better during the postseason, averaging 20.5 points per game, and led the team in steals and assists during the 1995 playoffs. Once again, Clyde Drexler had made the NBA Finals for the 3rd time in his career, and as they say, 3rd time's the charm. During the 1995 NBA Finals, Clyde Drexler played great, increasing his scoring, rebounding, and assist numbers to 21.5 points per game, 9.5 rebounds, and nearly 7 assists. Drexler was the facilitator for the Houston Rockets during the NBA Finals, as he led the team in assists. And once again, like every other player mentioned, he was a huge reason as to why the Houston Rockets won that NBA championship that season. Without the mid-season trade to get Drexler, I highly doubt the Houston Rockets would go on to beat Shaq and Penny, who looked dominant that year. Number 2, Ray Allen and the Miami Heat. It seemed like such an obvious addition at the time. Miami had their star players in LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, obviously Chris Bosh, the big three, who all needed their space in the middle. They needed shooters on the outside, hence why they had players like Mike Miller, Shane Battier, Rashard Lewis, who were all amazing 3-point shooters. But the Heat weren't done there. They got the best 3-point shooter to ever live at the time. It was a no-brainer, a 1-year contract, $3 million, veterans minimum, for a proven three-point shooter who was a perfect fit. And we all know how beneficial he was for this Miami Heat team in clutch situations. And his presence from behind the arc would help free LeBron and Wade. Even at his older age, he was still an elite shooter, and he'd also accepted his reserve role. Allen came off the bench in all 79 games in which he appeared for the Miami Heat, and he averaged 10.9 points on 45% field goal shooting and 88% from the free throw line. And he hit numerous clutch threes for the Miami Heat that season, but none greater than the Game 6 3 in Miami to basically force a Game 7 and eventually an NBA championship in Miami. He wasn't the reason LeBron James and the Miami Heat won the championship in 2013. As the Heat don't get to that stage without LeBron James having a monster fourth quarter, or even without Chris Bosh who climbed high for that rebound to actually kick it out to Ray Allen. But in the end, the shot is one of the most iconic shots in NBA history, in NBA Finals history, and had it been any other player in his position in the league at the time, it's hard to imagine they make that shot, which is why it's one of the greatest signings of all time that led to an NBA championship, and it just happened to be for the Miami Heat. And at number 1, Ron Artest and the Los Angeles Lakers. As we've seen on this list, we've had some crazy characters. Dennis Rodman, Rasheed Wallace, and now Ron Artest. I find Ron's style is very similar to Dennis. The fact that both Michael and Kobe had a rivalry against their eventual teammates, both players are grit and grind players, both players had crazy dyed hair, both players played incredible defensively, and they both got under their opponent's skin. Both players had served suspensions in the league, and as great as Kobe and Jordan were, without Artest and without Dennis Rodman to do the dirty work, it's hard to say they win their NBA championship or championships without them. Prior to the 2009-2010 Los Angeles Lakers campaign, a number of moves were made by the Lakers in order to benefit Kobe and the team by becoming more of a veteran squad so that Kobe could go to battle in the playoffs and the Lakers would be ready to defend their title of 2009. They allowed their young, developing star in Trevor Ariza, who the Lakers were very high on, to be sent to the Houston Rockets. In return, the Lakers were able to sign Ron Artest to be their defensive specialist. He would play the same role as Trevor Ariza did for the Lakers, except that Artest was more of an established player, but he also had some issues that the Lakers needed to watch and keep in mind. But they had Kobe Bryant, and Kobe was going to put him in line. And we all know how talented Artest was on the defensive end. He had a Defensive Player of the Year accolade, and he was part of all defensive teams. The Lakers knew how great of a fit he'd be alongside Powell and Kobe, and the fact that now Ron Artest was able to effectively guard the opposition's top scorer meant that Kobe could concentrate on more of an offensive load rather than both, offensively and defensively, because he wouldn't have to guard the best player, which meant that he could conserve his energy and dominate more on the offensive end, allowing Artest to chase around the opposition's top scorer on the defensive end. Not only did Ron Artest play his role well, which allowed the Lakers to win a championship that year, he literally won them playoff games off his own shots. In Game 6 against the Phoenix Suns with the series tied 2-2,
Bryant turns and comes up short. Ron Artest as Bryant fires one that came up short. Artest, no question, got it off on time.
Which, if they were going down 3-2 against a tough Phoenix Suns team, who's to say that the Los Angeles Lakers don't come out of that series with the win? Not only did he win that game for the Los Angeles Lakers, he also had his most memorable play for the 2009-2010 NBA season during the NBA Finals. Kobe Bryant got doubled on the three-point line, kicks it out to Artest, Artest hits the game-winning three, celebrates, and we know the rest as history. And those were 5 NBA players through trade or signings that dramatically changed the franchise and the team and allowed them to get into the NBA Finals and win it all. Without these players on their teams, it's hard to believe they win an NBA championship. Yes, they may have been close, but as we all know, the NBA is a team sport. It takes a team effort, and without players like Artest, Dennis Rodman, Ray Allen who hit the clutch 3, Rasheed Wallace to lock down alongside Ben Wallace, and Clyde the Glide Drexler, it's hard to imagine that those teams win NBA championships without these players. So if you have any other players that you believe could have been mentioned in this video, let me know by commenting down below, and if you're new around here, be sure to hit that subscribe button for NBA content every single week, and I'd greatly appreciate it if you guys could drop a like to show your support. It's been your boy Nick Smith, I am out. Peace.